Okay, starters, as promised, I'm a man of my word. We've got people who are professionals. We are not subject matter experts. So we have people that are going to address us on the legalities of the Rea story against Bonang, particularly because it's been trending so much and there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from what has happened. So we've got attorneys from Mathepe Inc. Attorneys, Mpho le Reitumetse. They are basically going to assist us as we actually drive the course and enter this knowledge field that they are experts in. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. What an honor.
Thank you so much for honoring this invitation. I know as attorneys, you guys are very busy, and so it's an honor for me and my starters to get to dip a bit into your minds and actually learn a thing or two from your side. But I'd like to essentially start with getting to know you guys. Tell us who you are and what exactly you do and how you can help my starters outside of this particular segment.
My name is Mpho Mathepe. I am the founder and owner of Mathepe Incorporated Attorneys. We are based in Galaga. Galaga Business Exchange is the name of the office park.
That's in Midrand, right?
Yes, it's in Midrand. Our firm just turned 1 and
oh wow,
it's actually a milestone. Like, wow, we are here. It started in the middle or during the pandemic. I don't know who does that, but hey, I did it.
And you're still here,
Yes, and we're definitely still here. And we specialize in divorce, custody, matrimonial law, maintenance, litigation, bail application, wills and estate, medical negligence, conveyancing, and commercial.
Oh, that's a mouthful.
Yeah. Apart from other things. So I have an amazing team, and one of the best people I work with is Reitumetse. Trust me. Together, I don't know. Together, we are a force.
No, super. We're super honored. Thank you, basically. You heard starters. If you need any type of legal service and assistance, they are here to basically advise you, counsel you, and lead the way for you, right? Reitumetse, let me now hear from you a bit.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity and thank you for inviting us to your podcast. Well, my name is Reitumetse Senaoana, and I'm the legal consultant at Mathepe. So I think one thing Mpho left out is the fact that she's a boss lady. You know, this is 100% Black female-owned firm, you know. So we are young, dynamic people who are passionate about the law, but more than anything, we want to, you know, set the record straight. We have, and I don't want to politicize the issues now, but in any event, we have this assumption that Black lawyers are incompetent and so and so and so. But we want to then be the change within the fraternity or within the practice. You understand? So
I understand, yeah.
I'm 27, well, turning 27 this year. So that's
how
young.
Pretty young.
Yeah, that's how young we are. But yeah, as Mpho alluded, we have a growing practice. I mean, under over 12 months, actually, we've managed to stay afloat. And, you know, with startups, they normally fail within this the first year of starting, but we are doing great legal work. And if you do have an opportunity, please do come by our offices. We have a very, the chakra hands call it a Zen space. So yeah,
nice.
everyone is welcome here. So yeah, do pay us a visit and we can give you a consultation on any legal matter. If we can't, we'll refer you to an expert who can. But yeah, so yeah, thank you for the opportunity once more.
Now, that's excellent stuff. Now, thank you. Now, I want us to jump into basically the gist of it, because as attorneys, you guys are busy you know, time is money, as they say. And as a young startup, you'll understand it more than anybody else, correct? So now you've told us about the different types of services you provide, and now we are jumping into the digital media space, right? Now, maybe let's just jump into the case in point, right?
Yes.
The reason why I needed your advice in the first place.
Yeah.
With now what happened,
Yes.
there's the issue of her winning and a judgment coming against Rea, right? First and foremost, Rea didn't go to court. So Rea didn't attend court. That's the first thing. So maybe just share the implications of that, because I'm interested to know if he had gone to court, was his presence going to have an impact on the overall judgment had he gone to court? Versus not going to court, before we get into the gist of the actual judgment.
Yeah. I must add, I haven't had time to look at the judgment, but essentially I have an understanding that there is a default judgment granted in favor of Bonang. But now let's just get into your question. So firstly, we need to understand how our law operates. We have adopted Roman Dutch law with a bit of English law in it, right? And what then has happened is that we've developed, or there is a system that is called civil procedure, right? So these are the steps that one follows in one, instituting a legal matter, secondly, going to court, obtaining a date, and then thirdly, and finally obtaining judgment, right? So in terms of civil procedure, if you are served with papers as a defendant, let's say, for instance, in a case where you owe me money for goods that I've sold to you, right?
Yes.
One of the things that I'm going to issue with you firstly is a letter of demand, right? From the letter of demand, I have to then issue summons. From the summons, you then have to say you are defending the matter or you're not defending the matter. Then from there, if you are defending, there's an entire process that's set out within the civil procedure as to how many days you have to give me back your intention to oppose, how many days do I have to file a plea, right? Now, the law has already contemplated in instances where you have a recalcitrant defendant, meaning that you have a defendant who does not want to take part in the proceedings for any other reason. It could be they're out of the country, or you can't locate the person, or they just blatantly ignored your summons, right? So again, looking at the civil procedure, then we rely on a process called default judgment. By definition, it means that you get the judgment in your favor by default. That's creative, right?
See what she did.
Yeah. So essentially, you then obtain judgment in absence of the defendant, meaning that either the person ignored your summons, or they did not file a plea. There's various reasons as to why you can obtain default judgment. So your question was then, would have his presence impacted the overall judgment? Yes, had he then, entertained the proceedings?
Yeah.
And I'll give you a straightforward answer. Yes, it would have impacted it would have impacted the overall judgment, in the sense that one, you would have had a defense entered in, meaning that we would have the other side of the story. I must add this now. There's another legal principle that is called audi alteram pater, right? Meaning,
okay.
Yeah. So yes, if I can put it in simple terms that everyone will understand, is that, Audi, the car, Audi.
Yeah.
So if you read it, the word is synonymous with listening, like audio.
Yeah.
there's a whole background story of how the Audi car manufacturer was German, well, is German, right? And so I digress. By the way, this happens quite a lot, but I'll drive the point home. Don't worry.
Yeah, please, yeah.
His name meant to listen in German, actual German, right? Or Polish. I might be getting my facts wrong, but in essence, somebody stole his IP. So Audi was called something else before. Somebody stole his IP, then he changed the name from what it usually was to Audi, meaning to hear. So he translated his actual name to German to say Audi, listen. So basically Audi alteram patem is a Latin term meaning that hear the other side. So you see the scales of justice, there's always two sides. So we need to give somebody an opportunity to state their case. You understand? So how then Audi alteram patem ties into this? The young man had an opportunity to come and state his case. You understand? But he elected not to. Not to show up at court for any reason. We don't know what the reasons might have been, but in essence, he negated his Audi alteram patem privilege. You know, he waived it, and therefore judgment was granted in absence or in default. So had he then elected to exercise his Audi alteram patem privilege, he would have entered a notice of intention to defend and probably a plea. A plea is a document explaining your version of events or your defense. So another thing is that if a matter is defended, it can then be heard in open court. So default judgment is granted in two scenarios, either by the registrar of the high court of the court, sorry, could be match court or high court, or it's granted in open court. And so in default judgment being granted in open court, it is to ascertain certain facts. It does not necessarily mean that now you have to come and defend the matter. You failed to defend it on the papers. Now we're in open court. But for default judgment, it is for purposes of just ascertaining certain facts. So to answer your question, yes, his presence would have had a different outcome, if I can boldly put it that way. It would have totally altered the amount claimed. That's one example. Or it would have just been chucked out on whatever reason or whatever defense he may have offered. You understand?
So in essence, he shot himself in the foot in a way.
Yes. And I'll be quick to say this. If you have a matter that is against you, the first port of call is enter a defense. Even though you might not know what is lying ahead, defend the matter, you know, defend it. Then find somebody who can give you advice or call us, you know.
For sure.
So in essence, don't ignore legal papers, because there's implications to it, and one of them being the harsh one. Well, it's not necessarily harsh. I mean, you were given the opportunity, but judgment can be granted in your absence, and essentially it becomes enforceable. You understand? It's a court-ordered judgment. So yeah, his presence would have altered the outcome.
Okay, nice. Nice. Now let's look at the other side of the coin now, in the sense that judgment was granted. He basically has to pay 300,000 towards Bonang. Over and above that, he also has to cover the legal fees, Bonang, right?
Yes.
But he is having a bravado attitude and saying that, number one, he won't pay. So I'd like for you, number one, to touch on that, but indulge me a bit. So number one, he won't pay. Number two, what are the consequences should he continue with defamatory action? against Bonang, like continue to speak ill of Bonang on public platforms. And then the third thing which he highlighted is that he can't be arrested for defamation of character, right? But there's the other side now of contempt of court if he doesn't pay. So maybe touch on those three elements for me.
All right. So let's start with the bravado attitude. And I'll pose this question. Why do you think we have a legal system? Right? It's a simple question. You might be like, we needed order, law and order, right? Perfect answer. So in that scenario, the reason why we have a legal system in place is to enforce the rule of law. What that means is in olden times, people used to take matters into their own hands because there wasn't an established system. So it used to be blood for blood.
Yes.
You hit my brother, I come and hit you, but those archaic, barbaric practices have long been abandoned and done away with, right? So we operate within the confines of a legally or morally contractual legal system. So we have a social contract that, by virtue of being citizens of the Republic of South Africa, we are bound by the laws of South Africa, and the biggest one being the Constitution, right? So in essence, no one is above the law. We've seen it with our former president, 𝐷𝐸𝐿 𝐔𝐬𝐞𝐝, who was sent to prison for contempt of court. We've seen it with various other powerful people in government. No one is above the law. The law is there to enforce order, right? So the whole attitude of I will not show up, the bravado, that's just by the wayside. You will show up, fam. You will account for your actions. You will be held accountable, right? So when he says he won't pay, here's another reality check. And the fact is that you need to be aware of how the law operates if you're gonna make these bold statements. And quite frankly, I don't think our friend is getting the proper legal advice. And that's just an assumption. Allegedly, I can just
you are alleging.
But in essence, you will pay. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but they do turn, and you will pay. And if I can just give you this backdrop. So what happens after judgment is granted in favor of a complainant? You get what is called a court order stating that judgment was heard on this date and it was granted in your favor in this amount. Now in civil proceedings, and he's right by saying he won't go to prison. You do not get arrested for in a civil case. In a civil case, in a civil court order, it does not make provision for arrest. But in making sure that you pay up, we then move to the sheriff. You take your court order along with instructions to the sheriff to say this was granted in my favor and this is the amount. Sheriff, can you go and attach property in this amount? So then what happens is that you get the sheriff to go and enforce the court order or the court judgment, you see.
And if I have nothing to attach, as he alleges,
so
because I think that's where his confidence comes in to say, well, I don't have any assets, you guys can, whatever. I have nothing. So what, through thin air, you're gonna get this money?
So let's put it this way, and this is pre-legal advice now. How long do you think a court judgment stays in force? Let's say I get a judgment against you today. How long do you think that judgment will hang against you? just give me a random number. For how many years or days or months or weeks? What's the expiration date of that judgment?
I'm inclined to say indefinitely unless it states as a condition that.
Yeah, that's a safe answer.
Yeah.
But in essence, it takes 30 years. So if our friend is in his 20s and, you know, God willing, he lives long, you know, longer years and makes it to 50, by 49, we'll come for that McLaren. Yeah. So it hangs. It still hangs. So in essence, you might not pay today, but each dog has its day. So the law is set up in a way that, look, man, the arm of the law, it's far-reaching. It's long. It's patient. We will get you. And this is not to fearmonger. These are facts. We will definitely get you, bit by bit.
Now,
it might not be today.
Reitumetse, now just to throw a spanner in the works, because you know Twitter lawyers, like there's you guys, and then there's Twitter lawyers. So Twitter lawyers,
LLB Twitter.
LLB Twitter, you know, and they are pushing the narrative to say that, okay, fine, you are acting tough and you're saying that you won't pay, but by not paying, you are in contempt of court. So that's where now the thin line that I want us to address there. Is it just the judgment going to wait there and until that 29 years, 30 years? Or can actually he be arrested for contempt of court and he actually goes to prison? Because that's the one element that Twitter LLB is, or LLB Twitter is pushing.
Thank God there's no degrees issued by Twitter. the legal assessment is flawed. So contempt of court, and again, let's take it back to the basics, the definitions, right? If you do a quick Google search, what is contempt? Like the true meaning or the literal meaning of the word contempt. I want to show you how easy this can be. Legal definition. I think one of the reasons people need lawyers is because it's quite my former principal used to say the law is not common sense. It's quite easy to just throw, you know, your logic around, but in essence, contempt of court is behavior that opposes or defies the authority, justice, and dignity of the court. So, perfect example, our former president was called to come and testify, give testimony.
At the Zondo Commission.
At the Zondo Commission, right?
Yeah.
And then there was a court order granted to say, come and give
testimony.
Testimony. He defied that court order, right? So by defying it, you are in contempt. But now remember, in our scenario, we have a situation where the young man has been ordered to make payment. Now it shifts from the courts to the sheriff. You understand? So it's a matter of admin, not necessarily legal matter. So if for some or any other reason, we can then show that he's deliberately moving assets or hiding assets, that's a different ball game to get altogether. But in essence, when you just say, I won't pay, the sheriff will come and knock at your door. You understand? So if you say you won't pay versus actively, you know, hiding assets, actively misleading, and that would be contempt in that sense. But to simplify it even further, he wouldn't be in contempt necessarily by just saying he won't pay. There needs to be an active act of defying the court order. So by your saying you won't pay, that's again, it could just be allegedly. It's a non-statement. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
in essence, the consequences of him saying that he won't pay, it's us calling the sheriff, telling the sheriff where to find his assets. There's something that it's called a deed search. We can search if he owns any property. We can do a you know, with the software for vetting people. You can literally go through where were you born, how many pair of socks do you own? No, I'm just kidding about the socks, but in essence, we can find out if you have anything on your name. And again, there's still that 30-year period. You understand?
And then jumping on that bandwagon of the 30-year period, tell me this now. So one doesn't pay and it goes to the 29th and 30th year. Does that 300K now accrue interest up until the point of payment, or will it still be 300K given, you know, how the time value of money works?
That's a good question, actually. So in your papers, when you draft them, let's say your summons, for example, you will state there the legal interest. I might get the pronunciation wrong, but it's called contemporam rei, right? Meaning that from date of judgment, or even as far back as from date of letter of demand, up until final payment, interest will accrue at this rate, at the legal rate of, I think now it was 7%. It fluctuates over time, but in essence, if judgment is granted at 7%, it will be 7% up until date of final payment. So there is interest that accrues. The longer you take to pay, fam, the more money you will end up paying. You understand? So in a nutshell, the consequences of him saying that he won't pay, it's in essence more money that he will have to cough out. And then the other thing is, can he be arrested? Unfortunately, in civil matters or in a civil judgment, one may not necessarily be arrested. Now, I did the lawyer thing. What does may not necessarily be?
Yeah.
I mean, there would have to be a set of facts where we prove that so-and-so is factually moving assets, or he's hiding certain assets, or he's being fraudulent. So it will
anything
be,
in addition to that.
Yes,
basically.
in addition to it. It might not necessarily flow from the civil judgment itself, but if I do have a demand against you and I can show to an extent that you are being fraudulent, fraud is, you know, a legal crime. Sorry, it's a wait for it. It's a criminal crime. So it's a criminal method type of crime. So so in essence, contempt of court is you defying a court order and actively defying it.
Actively, man.
Yeah, you do not show up. You make certain I will not show up, and you actually do not show up. So if you say you won't pay, that's one leg. But now, are you not gonna not pay?
That's another one.
Yeah, that's the actual question. So the contempt aspect, I would tread carefully to say somebody's in contempt of court because they are unable to pay or they are not paying. But you'd be in contempt if you are actively avoiding to pay. You understand? Yeah. So there's an element of activeness in it. Just saying that you won't pay, it's neither here nor there, but actively hiding your net worth or what. But don't worry, SARS is there for us. Deeds office is there for us. There's companies that actually track your transactions. So there's so many ways to skin a cat. But we will get you, my friend.
And then sorry to interject. And then the issue of the legal fees. I get it now. It's going to be handed over to the sheriff.
Yes.
do the legal fees also accrue, or it's just now charged the percentage that the sheriff will get depending on how long it proceeds, or how it's prolonged?
So it's interest on the judgment amount, meaning that if judgment is granted at 1,000 Rand, it's interest at 1,000 Rand. Obviously, in your prayers, you've included the fact that there's legal costs thereof. You understand? So there needs to be a process of taxing those costs, legal costs, and then you get a tax certificate from the taxing master. But now these are the technicalities around it. But on a high level, in essence, you will be charged interest on a judgment amount. You may
principal.
Yes, you may enter into a settlement thereof to say, can I pay it in installments of X amount over X amount of period? That's allowed as well. You may then say, hey, this is what I have at this moment. We will satisfy it by attaching some or other asset. You understand? So we'll be patient with it. It takes time, but in essence, we will come for every cent up until judgment is satisfied. But yeah,
as a parting shot,
yeah.
As a parting shot, I want to give you a platform whereby you give some advice to, firstly, our young friend Rea Gopane. As a parting shot, what can you take from this? And then separately, as a parting shot, what advice can you give to us YouTubers and podcasters in the digital space, or people that are operating within the space overall?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unsolicited free legal advice to our dear friend. One, the law is there for a reason. It must be observed, it must be upheld, and no one is above the law. There's a whole reason as to why we have all these people in place: judges, magistrates, advocates, lawyers, attorneys, sheriff. It's an entire system aimed at maintaining law and order. Now, if you have committed a wrong, you are given an opportunity to enter a defense into the proceedings and state your case. Having been given that opportunity, if you waive it, the complainant has a leg in the form of the default judgment process, right? Having obtained judgment against you, you still have to uphold and abide by the law. No one is free or absorbed from complying with the law. You understand, my friend? So in essence, the law is there for a reason, and no one is above it. You will have your day. If it's not today, it might be tomorrow. But if it's not tomorrow, it might be in 29 years' time. And even then, whatever excuse you may give, there'll still be an operation around it. This is an entire system. You can't willy-nilly say, I won't comply. It's chess, not checkers, if I can put it that way. So, and again, it helps to have somebody with a rounded view of what will happen. So in essence, most of us operate with short-sightedness or with misguided long-sightedness, if there's such a thing. But in essence, yes, have somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, have somebody who has an appreciation of their duty towards you. We are regulated, by law. We have what is called a ethical duty to be honest towards you and to give you the best, not necessarily the best, but to the best of our knowledge, the most sound advice. Lawyers do cost, but there's a reason why they cost what they cost. It's a good investment. So get yourself a lawyer. Yes, and let's say for hint,
Essentially, you are reminded, you said you were watching my interview with Nota. I don't know if you've gotten to the part where he quotes Jay-Z in the Blueprint album, and he quotes the lines where Jay-Z is like, most important is lawyer fees. Because I posed the question to him to say, why are you spending so much money on lawyers when that money could go elsewhere? So I think you've summed it up very well, essentially, somewhat backing what he actually said in that interview.
Shout out to Nota, and shout out to all the Black people who are creating. You know, we come from a long line of being consumers. Now let's start owning stuff. But shout out to everyone. I'm keeping a close eye in the space, and hopefully we can all collaborate and the money circulates within.
Definitely.
Politics out of it.
Definitely. But Reitumetse, thank you so much for offering your advice to us starters and those beyond my starters circle. Luckily, we have someone who's well-versed, who's very articulate, who's able to share a view that will benefit many, and also who is very, very generous with the legal advice. Because guys, you actually have to pay for this information that you are getting here, you know? And to my fellow creators and fellow YouTubers, I hope you actually grasped and gained a lot of what the Reitumetse said. Go and support Black businesses. Keep creating, keep working on your craft, but work within the confines and limitations of the law so that we can actually get to grow the space, so that we can actually become a force, creating our own web, and it circulates accordingly, as Reitumetse said. But thank you very much. And remember, guys, it starts with you.
At the end of the day, the aim is to dominate the legal space. So one step at a time, I believe we'll get there.